After returning from the demon's castle, Jinwoo is surprised to receive a call directly from the chairman himself and immediately asks if something has happened. Chairman Go, in his usual calm tone, asks if Jinwoo has been watching the news. Jinwoo admits he hasn't been keeping up with current events. Chairman Go realizes Jinwoo is unaware of the situation and offers to explain it in person. Chairman Go mentions that the operation to reclaim Jeju Island from the Ants will launch in 4 days, and that the association needs Jinwoo's help for the raid, as the entire country has been longing for the reclamation of Jeju Island. Jinwoo listens carefully, weighing the opportunity to level up against the risks involved. As the conversation continues, Jinwoo suddenly senses mana waves nearby. He pauses alert and asks Chairman Go about it. Chairman Go laughs, impressed by Jinwoo's sharp senses, and explains that the S-rank hunters are warming up in the gym in preparation for the raid. He mentions that even the Japanese S-rank hunters, including the renowned Goto Ryuji, are present. Jinwoo is intrigued by the mention of Goto Ryuji, a name known to everyone, even those outside the hunter community. Chairman Go invites Jinwoo to visit the gym to see the hunters in action. Jinwoo agrees and arrives at the gym with Chairman Go, and is immediately struck by the sight of so many S-rank hunters gathered in one place. The mana waves he sensed earlier are coming from the sparring match between Baek Yoonho and DongWook, an S-rank hunter from the Fame Guild. The two are locked in an intense battle, their movements swift and powerful, sending shockwaves through the gym. Despite DongWook's impressive strength, it's clear that Baek is holding back. As the fight progresses, Choi Jong-In enters the gym and explains that Baek isn't using his full power because of the audience watching. If he were to fight at maximum capacity, he would transform into his beast-like form, which could put him in an awkward position. Choi Jong-In then shifts the focus to the Japanese S-rank hunters who are gathered nearby. He explains their significance, pointing out that they are some of the most powerful hunters in Japan. Among them is Goto Ryuji, Japan's strongest hunter, and a figure of immense renown even outside the hunter community. As Jinwoo enters the gym, his presence immediately draws attention. Goto Ryuji, Japan's strongest hunter, notices him and begins assessing him. Due to Jinwoo's ability to hide his presence, Goto assumes he must be an assassin-type hunter. However, his interpreter corrects him, stating that Jinwoo is officially classified as a mage-type hunter. Goto, skeptical of this information, dismisses it as impossible, unable to reconcile Jinwoo's overwhelming aura with the typical characteristics of a mage. Meanwhile, Hae-In also takes notice of Jinwoo. She quietly remarks to herself that he is the reason the air in the gym feels different. Another Japanese hunter, who also has a sensitive nose like Hae-In, notices her. He considers striking up a conversation, but hesitates, worried that she might misinterpret his intentions as flirtation. He ultimately decides against it, leaving the thought behind. As the Japanese hunters continue to evaluate the South Korean hunters, Goto Ryuji grows increasingly unimpressed. He observes the group and remarks that most of them seem mediocre compared to his expectations. His interpreter, Hanakawa, agrees, expressing her own lack of enthusiasm for the South Korean S-rank hunters. However, Goto acknowledges that there are a few exceptions. He singles out Hae-In and Chairman Go Gunhee, noting that they could rival Japan's best hunters. The atmosphere shifts when Park Jong-soo, the guild master of the Knights Guild, steps forward. Jong-soo boasts about his guild's achievements, emphasizing that they have the largest number of A-rank hunters in South Korea. Hanakawa, unimpressed, asks if he will be joining the Jeju Island Raid. Jong-soo clarifies that he is part of the defense team responsible for blocking off the island. Hanakawa responds bluntly, stating that an A-rank hunter cannot be trusted with such an important task. Her words cut through the room, creating a palpable tension. The situation escalates when Hanakawa steps forward, challenging Park Jong-soo's claims and questioning his abilities. Her confidence and sharp tone provoke Jong-soo, and the two quickly find themselves in a standoff. Jong-soo proposes a simple challenge to settle the matter. The first person to touch the opponent's wrist will be declared the winner. Hanakawa agrees, but she knows this will be more of a mental game than a physical fight. She prepares herself determined to prove her superiority. As the match begins, Jong-soo takes an odd stance, which confuses Hanakawa. She moves quickly, attempting to grab his wrist, but Jong-soo skillfully dodges her attacks. His movements are fluid and precise, frustrating Hanakawa as she fails to land a single touch. This only serves to anger Hanakawa further, and she becomes more aggressive in her attempts. During one of her attacks, Hanakawa notices that Jong-soo's pants are ripped. She sees this as an opportunity to distract him and make her move. She lunges forward aiming for his wrist, but to her shock, Jong-Soo counters her attack and grabs her wrist instead. The match ends with Jong-Soo as the unexpected victor, leaving Hanekawa stunned. After his surprising victory over Hanekawa, Jong-Soo doesn't hold back his thoughts. He remarks that Hanekawa is the type of hunter who hides behind tanks during battles, relying on others to protect her. He points out that she lacks experience in one-on-one combat, which is why she struggled against him. Jong-Soo then explains that in South Korea, hunters sometimes have to fight humans, not just magic beasts. He emphasizes that in such situations, predicting human movements is far more difficult than dealing with monsters. He adds that when things escalate, South Korean hunters are even forced to kill their own kind if necessary. With a confident tone, Jong-Soo concludes by saying that if he had been wielding a sword during their match, he would have sliced her throat instead of just grabbing her wrist. The tension in the room is palpable, but before it can escalate further, Goto Ryuji steps forward. He proposes a sparring match between the S-rank hunters of both countries, suggesting it as a way to build trust and cooperation ahead of the Jeju Island Raid. His words carry a subtle challenge, as if he's testing the South Korean hunters' strength. Chairman Go listens carefully and agrees to the proposal, but he insists on excluding mage-type and non-combatant hunters from the matches, as it would be difficult to determine a clear winner in such cases. Baek Yoonho steps in to propose a few additional rules for the sparring matches. He suggests that a hunter can win by either touching their opponent's back or wrist, or by knocking them down. The rules are simple but effective, ensuring that the matches will test both skill and strategy. The hunters from both countries agree to the terms, and the participants are quickly selected. Each of them steps forward their presence, radiating confidence and strength. Goto Ryuji chooses not to participate in the sparring match, instead observing the fights from the sidelines. Jinwoo is glad for the opportunity to see the hunters in action without having to step in himself. Among the Japanese hunters, one of them notes that he already has a good grasp of Baek Yoonho and DongWook's fighting styles from their earlier sparring session. Meanwhile, Lim Tae-ju, one of the South Korean hunters, hopes that his opponents might go easy on him, though he knows the chances of that are slim. As the match begins, the gym erupts into chaos. DongWook activates his ability, growing larger and more imposing, ready to engage in a battle of strength. One of the Japanese hunters assumes she will be going one-on-one with Hae-In and prepares herself for the challenge. Tanaka Kenzo, another Japanese hunter, clashes with DongWook, their raw power shaking the gym. At the same time, Lim Tae-ju uses his distance combat. He fires a magic arrow aiming to keep his opponent at bay while exploiting his long-range advantage. The intensity of the match is evident, and Chairman Go observes that despite the gym's interior being fortified with high-quality essence stones, the hunters have managed to completely wreck the facility within seconds of the match starting. Baek Yoonho acknowledges that they are some of the most powerful S-rank hunters in the world, and realizes that he may need to go all out to stand a chance. He resolves to do whatever it takes, even if it means wrecking his opponents. Meanwhile, Kumamoto, one of the Japanese hunters, decides to ignore the sparring rules entirely. Instead of aiming for Baek's wrist or back, he fights with the intent to kill, following his own philosophy of survival of the fittest. However, at the last second, Kumamoto hesitates, pulling back from delivering a fatal blow. Notices this hesitation and begins to wonder about Kumamoto's character. Baek also suspects that Goto Ryuji deliberately sent Kumamoto into the match to test whether he is ready for the Jeju Island Raid. Disliking the idea of being used for such a test, Baek decides to give Kumamoto a taste of his true power. Kumamoto becomes visibly scared. He wants nothing more than to escape the fight. Baek, unimpressed, calls Kumamoto a coward and laments the fact that someone like him holds the title of an S-rank hunter. From the sidelines, Park Jong-soo comments that this match is nothing compared to the one he had earlier. Meanwhile, DongWook is defeated, and Lim Tae-ju also falls shortly after. With two of their team members down, the focus shifts entirely to Baek Yoonho, who now faces the full attention of the Japanese hunters. On the other side of the gym, Hae-In continues her fight against Kanai. Kanai quickly realizes that Cha is not only incredibly fast, but also nearly impossible to predict. Her movements are fluid and erratic, making it difficult to anticipate her next attack. Cha's fighting style has earned her the nickname The Dancer, as she moves through battles with such grace and precision that it appears as though she is dancing. This nickname stems from her ability to swiftly kill one beast after another, but Cha finds the name embarrassing and dislikes being called that. Despite Kanai's best efforts, Cha's speed and unpredictability prove too much. She finishes the match by touching Kanai's back, securing her victory. As Hae-In moves to assist Baek Yoonho, the battle takes an unexpected turn. Kumamoto, who had been lingering on the sidelines, suddenly charges at Cha with the intent to attack. However, before he can land a blow, Cha reacts with incredible speed. In the blink of an eye, she strikes him 14 times, her movements so fast and precise that it leaves everyone in the room stunned. The sheer speed and ferocity of her counterattack catch even the Japanese hunters off guard, and they watch in disbelief as Kumamoto staggers back, unable to comprehend what just happened. Kumamoto, humiliated and enraged, loses his temper. His teammates exchange uneasy glances, knowing what this means. They note that once Kumamoto gets angry, he becomes a completely different person, losing all sense of rationality. While he is capable of clearing B-rank dungeons on his own, his inability to work with a team makes him a liability in situations that require cooperation. Despite his earlier hesitation, Kumamoto now throws himself into the fight with everything he is determined to take Hae-In down. As Kumamoto prepares to unleash his full strength, Hanekawa grows concerned. She suggests that they intervene before things escalate further, but Goto Ryuji calmly explains that this is a test, a way to gauge Kumamoto's abilities and readiness for the Jeju Island Raid. Goto's cold and calculated approach makes it clear that he is willing to let the situation play out, even if it puts others at risk. Kumamoto charges at Hae-In with reckless abandon, his anger driving him to attack without restraint. Just as he is about to strike, a figure suddenly appears between them. It's Jinwoo. In an instant, Jinwoo intercepts Kumamoto's attack and effortlessly knocks him down, stopping the fight before it can spiral out of control. The room falls silent as everyone processes what just happened. The Japanese hunters, particularly Goto, are taken aback by Jinwoo's speed and strength. Goto, who had been skeptical of Jinwoo's classification as a mage-type hunter, grows suspicious. He begins to question whether Jinwoo's abilities truly align with the official reports and decides that he needs to confirm it for himself. Jinwoo calmly turns to Hae-In and suggests that they let the Japanese hunters take the win this time. Hae-In nods, understanding his intent. Goto Ryuji steps forward, his commanding presence drawing the attention of everyone in the room. He looks directly at Jinwoo and proposes a one-on-one fight. Jinwoo immediately recognizes Goto's intent, that he wants to test Jinwoo's strength and see how powerful he truly is. After a moment of thought, Jinwoo decides to accept the challenge, seeing it as an opportunity to measure how much stronger he has become after conquering the demon castle. However, he sets one condition, that he wants to fight with full force, holding nothing back. Goto, slightly taken aback, wonders if Jinwoo is being serious. After a brief pause, he agrees, reasoning that there is a powerful S-rank healer present if anything goes wrong. As the two prepare for their fight, Hae-In watches with concern. She worries about Jinwoo and whether he will be okay against someone as powerful as Goto. Baek Yoonho notices her unease and asks if she is all right, particularly with so many hunters around. Knowing her sensitive nose makes it difficult for her. Cha replies that she needs to get used to it for the upcoming Jeju Island Raid. Still worried, she asks Baek why he isn't stopping the fight. Baek, however, admits that he is looking forward to seeing the match between Goto and Jinwoo, intrigued by the potential clash of their strengths. The match begins and Goto wastes no time launching an attack at Jinwoo. To his shock, Jinwoo effortlessly dodges the strike. Goto can't believe that a mage-type hunter could move so quickly and silently. His disbelief grows as Jinwoo continues to evade his attacks with ease. Frustrated, Goto decides to show Jinwoo his true power, determined to overwhelm him. Meanwhile, Jinwoo observes Goto's movements and thinks to himself that this man is different from other S-rank hunters. Despite this, Jinwoo feels a sense of satisfaction, happy that he can dodge Goto's attacks. A small smirk forms on his face, which only serves to anger Goto further. The spectators are stunned as they watch Jinwoo hold his own against Japan's strongest S-rank hunter. Hae-In, however, sees through the situation. She realizes that Jinwoo isn't just holding up against Goto, he's deliberately provoking him, trying to make Goto attack more. The match continues with Jinwoo dodging Goto's attacks again and again. Goto, growing increasingly frustrated, comes to the conclusion that he cannot win unless he uses his full power. His intent shifts, and he decides to go all out, even if it means killing Jinwoo. The system immediately recognizes Goto's murderous intent and warns Jinwoo of the danger. Goto's next attack lands, cutting Jinwoo's cheek. Blood trickles down, but Jinwoo remains calm. As Goto launches another attack, Jinwoo intercepts it, grabbing Goto's hand mid-strike. The room falls silent as everyone processes processes what just happened. Jinwoo, holding Goto's hand firmly, thinks to himself that if this continues, he might trigger a quest similar to the ones he had with Hwang Dong-soo and Tang Kaishik. Goto, on the other hand, realizes that Jinwoo could have grabbed his wrist and ended the match, but chose not to. Jinwoo confirms this, stating that he did it on purpose because he wants the fight to continue. Both fighters are now fully intent on going all out. Before they can escalate further, the other hunters intervene, rushing to stop them. Baek Yoonho steps in, reminding everyone that Goto is one of Japan's key hunters, and that if anything were to happen to him, it would cause significant problems. He suggests they call it a day, effectively ending the match. As the tension subsides, Ma DongWook approaches Jinwoo and praises him for his performance, noting that he managed to fight Goto and come out with only a small cut on his face. DongWook explains that his guild has a surplus of mage-type hunters, but lacks strong fighters, and Jinwoo's abilities would be a perfect fit. However, to DongWook's surprise, Choi Jong-In revealing that Jinwoo is also classified as a mage-type hunter. This revelation leaves DongWook momentarily stunned. Meanwhile, Jinwoo reflects on the fight, thinking to himself that he may have gone overboard. He knows that his performance was far beyond what a typical S-rank hunter would expect from a mage, but he also understands the strength of other S-rank hunters. Despite his confidence, he feels relieved that no one noticed his shadows during the fight. He is especially glad that neither Chairman Go Gunhee nor Goto Ryuji picked up on the presence of his shadow soldiers, as it would have raised questions which he wasn't ready to answer. Goto, on the other hand, remains silent but visibly shaken. The fight with Jinwoo has left him in shock. After the match, Jinwoo approaches Chairman Go Gunhee. He informs the chairman that he does not wish to participate in the Jeju Island Raid. After witnessing the intense fight between Jinwoo and Goto, Baek Yoonho sits in his office deep in thought. He reflects on what he saw and comes to a startling realization. It is possible for a hunter to level up. The idea fascinates him, and he begins to wonder just how much Jinwoo is worth now, given his incredible growth and strength. However, Baek quickly dismisses the thought of trying to recruit Jinwoo, knowing it would be a waste of time. Instead, he resolves to maintain a good relationship with him, understanding that having someone like Jinwoo as an ally is far more valuable. His thoughts are interrupted when he receives the finalized list of hunters participating in the Jeju Island Raid. As he scans the list, his eyes widen in shock when he sees Sung Jinwoo's name is not on it. The revelation leaves him stunned, unable to comprehend why someone as powerful as Jinwoo would not be included in such a critical mission. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Goto Ryuji, who is on a call with Sugimoto. Goto mentions that South Korea has some skilled S-rank hunters, acknowledging their strength after witnessing the sparring matches. Sugimoto, however, dismisses the idea confidently, stating that none of them are as strong as Goto. Goto hesitates for a moment before replying that he isn't so sure about that. He then brings up Sung Jinwoo, revealing that Jinwoo has undergone a second awakening. Goto finds it odd that Jinwoo's name is missing from the Jeju Island Raid list, and remarks that Chairman Go must be crazy for not including him. Sugimoto, trying to reassure Goto, says that everything will be fine without Jinwoo. After a moment of thought, Goto reluctantly agrees, though the unease in his voice suggests he isn't entirely convinced. The scene shifts to Jeju Island, the home of the Ants. The colony is in turmoil, with the ants desperate to leave the island. They are running out of food, and their children are resorting to eating one another to survive. Queen wants to leave the island in search of food for their citizens, and also declares that they need a strong warrior to lead them. The scene cuts to an image of an ant warrior still inside an egg. The queen describes this warrior as a powerful soldier who will lead the colony, making their enemies tremble in fear. As the egg hatches, the monstrous ant emerges, radiating strength and ferocity. The queen commands the new warrior to eat as many ants as it needs to grow stronger, ensuring it will be ready to lead the colony to victory. The scene shifts to Jinwoo's house, where he is spending time with his mother and sister. Jinwoo playfully pinches his sister's cheeks, scolding her for not cleaning the house. His mother, smiling at the interaction, suggests that they clean the house together as a family. Jinwoo nods in agreement, and the three of them begin tidying up. As they work, Jinwoo's mother asks if he has heard any news about his father. Jinwoo replies that he hasn't, and starts thinking why he continues to live in their current home despite having enough money to live comfortably for the rest of his life. He admits that he stays because he hopes his father might return one day. As he reflects on this, Jinwoo realizes that his mother needs him now more than ever, solidifying his decision not to join the Jeju Island Raid. The scene shifts to the Hunter Association, where a detailed explanation of the evolution of the ants is being given. The speaker explains that during the first and second raids on Jeju Island, the ants looked relatively similar, large but but still resembling typical insects. However, by the third raid, the ants had begun to change. They adopted a more upright stance resembling humans and started using some of their legs as hands. Recent photos reveal even more startling changes. The ants now have more human-like features, including wings, making them even more dangerous. The speaker emphasizes that this rapid evolution is the reason why both South Korean and Japanese hunters have united to form a joint strike force. The gravity of the situation is clear, as the hunters prepare for what will undoubtedly be the most challenging raid yet. As news spreads that Jinwoo will not be participating in the Jeju Island Raid Backlash begins to surface online, many criticize him mocking his past as an E-rank hunter and claiming that he must be too afraid to join the raid. However, Jinwoo remains unfazed by the negativity. He thinks to himself that he doesn't care about what others say about him. The only thing that truly matters to him is his sister Jinah and her safety. His focus remains on protecting his family, not on the opinions of strangers. While reflecting on this, Jinwoo receives a call from Jinho. Excitedly, Jinho informs him that he has found a new apartment for himself and has also secured an office space for their guild. Jinwoo agrees to meet him, and the two head out to inspect the office. As they arrive, Jinwoo is immediately struck by the size of the space. True to Jinho's extravagant nature, the office is far larger than what they need. Jinwoo questions why they would need such a big place for just the two of them. Jinho explains that in order to officially establish a guild, they need at least 3 people: a guild master, a vice guild master, and 1 additional member. Jinwoo, unimpressed by the explanation, casually replies that he will find someone just to fill the head count. Jinho then mentions that someone had come looking for him, a foreigner who left a card with contact information. Suddenly, Jinwoo activates one of his new skills, a power he gained after completing the Demon Castle. Using his shadow exchange ability, he instantly switches places with one of his shadows. He reappears in his neighborhood where he finds a woman being threatened by a man. The man, clearly enjoying the situation, remarks that he loves the neighborhood. From behind, Jinwoo calmly responds that he also loves the neighborhood and asks the man why he is behaving this way. The man, startled but defiant, replies that he does it for fun. He then moves to attack Jinwoo, saying that whenever he sees someone weaker, he feels an uncontrollable urge. Before he can finish his sentence, Jinwoo stabs him with a dagger. The man freezes in shock as Jinwoo coldly commands him to surrender to the authorities before midnight. Jinwoo warns that if he doesn't turn himself in, his shadow will kill him. Despite his stern demeanor, Jinwoo states that he doesn't want to kill the man unless absolutely necessary. As Jinwoo walks away, his thoughts shift to the Jeju Island Raid, which is set to begin the next day. He reflects on the gravity of the situation and the challenges the hunters will face. Meanwhile, Goto Ryuji is also lost in thought, replaying the fight he had with Jinwoo in his mind. He recalls the moment during their battle when he felt the overwhelming presence of death. The memory unsettles him, and he wonders what is wrong with him. Goto realizes that he has become more sensitive to mana since the fight, and starts questioning his own abilities. The scene shifts to the next day, as a helicopter carrying the hunters flies toward Jeju Island. As the Jeju Island Raid begins, ships from Taiwan and China start moving toward the island, forming a massive fleet. The scene shifts to Jong-Soo, who observes the preparations and remarks that the ants must already know they are coming. He warns his team to brace themselves, as the ants could attack at any moment. Jong-Soo reminds everyone that it is their guild's job as the defense team to kill any ants that attempt to escape and protect the mainland. Yoon-tae, one of his loyal guild members, responds with unwavering confidence, stating that he will follow Jong-Soo to the ends of the earth. Another guild member suggests running tactical drills with the vice guild master, but she dismisses the idea, saying that her title is just for show. The scene shifts to Lim Tae-ju, who is scolding his team for deploying Lee Min-sung to Jeju Island. He angrily orders them to keep Min-sung as far back as possible, emphasizing how valuable he is. Despite his frustration, the troops have already been deployed, and Lim reluctantly instructs them to ensure Min-sung stays hidden and safe. Meanwhile, guilds from across South Korea are on standby, ready to assist if needed. The Fiend Guild, led by Lee Min-sung, and the Hunters Guild, featuring the humble and reliable Sun Ki-hoon, are among those stationed near the island. Strike teams have also been deployed, consisting of a B-rank leader, 3 C ranks, and over 10 D and E rank hunters. Familiar faces like Lee Joohee and Song Cheol also make an appearance joining the raid. It feels nostalgic to see them back in action. In total, 5,000 individuals, including hunters and support teams, are either actively raiding or on standby, prepared for any scenario. The scene shifts to the helicopter carrying South Korea's S-rank hunters toward Jeju Island. Among them is a cameraman who is filming the raid for a live broadcast. He explains that there is a 10-minute delay in the footage, allowing the editing team to filter out any disturbing scenes before airing them. Baek Yoonho, sitting quietly, wonders why Chairman Go would send a cameraman on such a dangerous mission. DongWook, noticing the cameraman's presence, advises him to take care of himself. The cameraman reassures them, revealing that he is an A-rank hunter who chose a normal life because he dislikes fighting monsters. He explains that this isn't his first time filming dangerous situations, as he has covered dungeon breaks in the past. Despite his experience, DongWook senses the cameraman's nervousness and tries to calm him down. He assures him that this raid will be successful, emphasizing that this is the final attempt to reclaim Jeju Island. DongWook adds that the nation has already failed 3 times before, so everyone will be glued to their televisions hoping for a victory. Baek Yoonho, lost in thought, reflects on the gravity of the situation. He knows that if this raid fails, South Korea could be wiped off the map. The stakes are higher than ever, and the world is in desperate need of heroes. The hunters in the helicopter prepare themselves for the battle ahead, knowing that the fate of their country rests on their shoulders. As the helicopter flies toward Jeju Island, Baek Yoonho is surprised to see Min Byung-gu on board. He remarks that he never thought he would see Byung-gu in a raid. Byung-gu chuckles and replies that he's here to heal Baek when it's unnecessary, joking that Baek might be the first one to need healing because he pounces on every beast he sees. The lighthearted comment makes everyone laugh. Hae-In then turns to Baek and asks if he spoke to Jinwoo before coming. Baek says no and asks why she's curious. Cha quickly replies saying for no reason, but her face flushes red. The helicopter continues its journey, and soon they reach Jeju Island. As they approach, Byung-gu begins trembling slightly, the weight of the mission clearly affecting him. The scene shifts to Goto Ryuji, who has already landed in Jeju City with the Japanese S-rank hunters. He surveys the area and comments that the city is now a complete ghost town. The streets are eerily silent, and the corpses of ants are scattered everywhere. Goto wonders why the ants are dead and guesses that there might be a predator lurking nearby. Despite the unsettling atmosphere, the Japanese hunters divide into 4 teams and begin their operation, each team heading toward their assigned objectives. Back in the helicopter, the Korean S-rank hunters suddenly feel a surge of mana. The air grows heavy and they realize the ants are coming. A swarm of flying ants appears, heading straight for the helicopter. Choi Jong-In steps forward and calmly says he will handle them. He conjures a flame spear and hurls it at the approaching ants, the fire spreading and attacking multiple targets at once. Byung-gu watches in awe and compliments Choi's skill, but Choi downplays it, explaining that the ants have evolved significantly. He admits that his flames might not be as effective as they used to be. Choi's prediction proves correct, as the ants withstand his initial attack with minimal damage. Realizing he needs to escalate, Choi creates a massive flame ball and launches it at the swarm. The attack is far more effective, scattering and burning the ants. Without hesitation, Choi jumps out of the helicopter to continue the fight on the ground. DongWook, concerned, calls out to him, but Hae-In reassures him, saying that Choi will be fine, and explains that his fire magic is especially effective against large groups of enemies, making him the perfect person to handle the swarm. On the ground, Choi Jong-in unleashes a series of large flame attacks, incinerating ants as they approach. As he fights, he recalls a childhood memory of playing with ants. He remembers how he used to light them with a lighter and hear the faint snapping noise they made. The memory brings a strange sense of nostalgia as he continues to burn through the swarm. After clearing a path, Choi signals to his teammates, giving them the green light to come down. Back in the helicopter, DongWook reminds everyone that unlike their previous raids, they don't have an escape route this time. He emphasizes that the Japanese hunters can only hold the ants off for about an hour, so they must defeat the queen within that time frame. With the plan clear, the remaining Korean S-rank hunters prepare themselves and jump down onto the island, ready to face the battle ahead. The Japanese destroyer Kaga begins its operation, signaling the start of the raid. As the ship moves into position, jamming signals are activated to block the ants from hearing the queen's call for help. The Japanese hunters on board prepare themselves for the battle ahead. Kumamoto struggles to adjust to the situation and is scolded by his teammate, who warns him that failure to adapt will lead to death. Meanwhile, Kenzo is seen playing with the ants, snapping off their wings one by one. His playful behavior amuses the rest of the team, who joke about how he seems to be having fun despite the danger. As the Japanese hunters continue their operation, they notice fireworks erupting near the ant tunnels in the distance. They quickly deduce that it must be Choi Jong-in using his fire magic. One of the Japanese hunters wonders aloud what would happen if his ice magic faced off against Choi's fire magic. This sparks a lighthearted exchange with another teammate, joking that the result would simply be cold and hot. The scene shifts to Choi Jong-in, who is leading the South Korean hunters deeper into the ant tunnels. He uses his flame prison ability, which he typically employs to tie up enemies as a shield to block ants ranked B D or lower from entering their area. The hunters pause to assess their surroundings, and Baek Yoonho comments on how dangerous the tunnels are. He notes that the labyrinth-like structure could easily lead them in circles if they take the wrong path. Choi agrees and uses his flames to scout ahead, deducing that the correct tunnel to the queen's chamber will likely show no signs of explosions, as it would be deeper and untouched. Baek feels reassured having Choi on their team, and the group begins their descent into the dark, twisting tunnels. Meanwhile, the scene transitions to Jinwoo, who is completing his daily quest. As he runs through the streets, he notices how unusually empty they are. He wonders if the broadcast of the Jeju Island Raid has started, as the entire nation would likely be glued to their screens. Reflecting on the strength of the South Korean and Japanese S-rank hunters, Jinwoo feels confident that they are capable of completing the raid without his help. He continues his quest, trusting that the hunters will succeed. Back in the tunnels, the South Korean hunters reach a new area and encounter one of the ants. They quickly kill it, and Choi Jong-In remarks that, as predicted, there are only a few ants left in this section. Observing the ants' deteriorated eyes, the team realizes that these creatures have evolved to guard the dark tunnels more effectively. They speculate that these ants are not the Queen's royal guards, and decide to push forward, relying on their firepower to clear the way. As they move deeper, Min Byung-gu wonders aloud whether the Queen might have abandoned her subjects and fled. However, Baek Yoonho dismisses the idea, pointing out that they are on an island and there is nowhere for the Queen to run. They soon discover a spawning ground filled with ant eggs, a clear indication that the Queen's chamber is nearby, and deduce that the ants they encountered earlier were stationed to protect the eggs. Choi Jong-in prepares to burn all the eggs, but the team notices one particularly large egg that stands out from the rest. They speculate about what could have hatched from it, wondering if it was a royal guard or something even more dangerous. Baek interrupts their speculation, urging them to forget about everything else and focus on finding and defeating the Queen. The scene shifts back to the Japanese hunters, who are engaged in a fierce battle with a swarm of flying ants. The ants attack in coordinated military formations, making them far more challenging to handle than expected. Kenzo claims to have killed around 30 ants, but admits that he was injured in the shoulder and waist during the fight. Shimizu offers to heal him, but jokes about wanting something in return. Kenzo teases her, saying that she makes more money than he does, and yet still has an obsession with money. They get ready for fight as more ants approach them. Suddenly, Shimizu's head is severed and her lifeless body collapsed to the ground. The Japanese hunters freeze in shock, unable to process what just happened. Before they can react, another hunter is killed in an instant. Kenzo, now on high alert, shouts a warning to his teammates, urging them to be careful. A mysterious monster emerges from the shadows, and Kenzo tries to fight back, but the creature moves too quickly. In a flash, Kenzo is struck down, his body falling lifelessly to the ground. One of Kenzo's teammates charges at it, determined to avenge his fallen comrades, but he too is killed in an instant. The South Korean hunters encounter the Queen's royal guards, who are revealed to be as strong as S-rank hunters. DongWook observes that at the end of the day, beasts are still beasts and cannot use strategy like humans do. As he finishes speaking, one of the royal guards lunges at him, but he quickly defends himself. Before the guard can attack again, Hae-In leaps into action, slicing the guard from top to bottom with her sword. She notes that the royal bodies are far tougher than expected, making them more challenging to defeat. DongWook, still catching his breath, remarks that despite the difficulty, he is relieved there aren't too many royal guards to deal with. Min Byung-gu steps forward, reassuring DongWook that he is there to back him up and that there's no need to worry. As he surveys the battlefield, he notices that one of the ants is still alive. Without hesitation, he finishes it off and warns Baek Yoonho that even if they crush the guards' skulls, the ants can remain alive for some time. He advises the team to either cut off their limbs or ensure they finish them off completely. DongWook speculates that the royal guards they are facing might be from an older generation, possibly first-generation ants that were cast out. This leads the team to believe that stronger second-generation guards may be waiting for them further ahead. Min Byung-gu reassures the team once again, reminding them that the buffs he provided should be more than enough to handle the challenges ahead. The hunters feel a surge of confidence and strength as the effects of the buffs take hold. As they press forward, they encounter a large group of ants blocking their path. Min Byung-gu jokes that he can take on one or two if needed, but Baek Yoonho dismisses the idea, stating that he cannot rely on a healer in battle. He adds that the buffs Min Byung-gu gave them are more than enough to handle the situation. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the Japanese S-rank hunters, who are tasked with checking on Team Charlie after losing contact with them. As they arrive at the location where Team Charlie Charlie was stationed, they find evidence of a battle. It appears that Team Charlie easily defeated the ants in the area, but the team itself is nowhere to be found. The Japanese hunters are puzzled and begin searching for clues about what happened. One of them stumbles upon Fujishima's glasses and is shocked to find his body nearby. The sight leaves them in disbelief as they struggle to accept that such a strong hunter could have been killed. Suddenly, Kei notices a foul, rotten stench in the air, unlike anything they've smelled before. The hunters grow uneasy as a dark, ominous aura begins to approach them. Kei, sensing the danger, lets out a roar, but before he can act, he is struck down. The scene abruptly shifts back to the South Korean hunters, who continue their advance through the tunnels, defeating ants along the way. They note that it took them only 5 minutes to clear the last group of ants, which they consider impressively fast. Baek Yoonho praises Hae-In for her performance, pointing out that she killed twice as many ants as he did, thanks to the buffs from Min Byung-gu. The team estimates that they have about 30 minutes left to complete the raid and begin strategizing their next steps. As they move forward, Hae-In detects the same rotten stench that the Japanese hunters encountered earlier. She deduces that it likely belongs to the queen, indicating that her chamber is nearby. Baek Yoonho takes the lead and scouts ahead, eventually finding the queen in her chamber, surrounded by 8 royal guards. The hunters note that the royal guards are as strong as S-rank hunters, but they remain confident in their ability to defeat them. DongWook volunteers to take care of the queen and assigns Hae-In to handle the guards. As the team prepares for battle, Choi Jong-In decides not to hold back. He unleashes his flames, creating a massive inferno to distract the guards and buy time for the others. However, as he focuses on his attack, an ant suddenly tries to ambush him from behind. Before it can strike, an S-rank ranger intervenes, shooting it down with a well-placed arrow. Meanwhile, Baek Yoonho decides to unleash his full power. He transforms into his beast form, his appearance becoming more monstrous as his strength surges. Determined to exterminate every last one of the ants, he roars with fury, shaking the chamber. Hae-In, seeing Baek's transformation for the first time, is momentarily stunned by the sheer intensity of his power. DongWook takes charge of the situation and asks Hae-In to handle the ant guards. Without hesitation, Cha uses her skill, Quake of Provocation, creating a massive boom that shakes the entire chamber. The force of her attack disrupts the guards' formation, and DongWook quickly realizes that he must keep the queen in check until the guards are completely taken down. Meanwhile, as the viewership ratings surpass 80%, he tries to get a closer look at the action. However, Myung-gu stops him, reminding him that this is an S-rank battle, and no one will be responsible for his safety if he gets too close. The cameraman, taken aback, realizes that even Myung-gu, a healer, is more than capable of holding his own in such a dangerous fight. The scene shifts to an elderly couple watching the live stream of the raid. The woman expresses hope, saying that the hunters might actually defeat the ants this time. Her husband, however, remains skeptical, still haunted by the memory of their son losing his life in a previous raid. She insists that they should watch, as this could be a turning point. On the TV, they see the South Korean hunters battling in the queen's chamber. DongWook is shown defending the queen by himself, struggling to hold her off while waiting for backup. Baek Yoonho, in his beast form, manages to kill one of the guards, leaving only 4 remaining. The couple, along with countless others glued to their screens, watches in suspense as the hunters gradually take down the guards. The number of guards dwindles to 3, then 2, and finally, all of them are defeated. The audience collectively notes that this is the 4th attempt to clear the Jeju Island Raid, and they desperately hope the hunters will succeed this time. As the tension rises, the viewership jumps to an unprecedented 85%. Meanwhile, they realize that if they succeed, South Korea will join the elite list of countries, alongside the USA, China, Russia, and France, that have successfully cleared an S-rank gate. The hunters close in on the queen, with the ranger launching a volley of arrows to weaken her. Baek Yoonho, still in his beast form, encourages the team not to fear the queen, declaring that she is nothing without her guards. He charges forward and slashes her with a powerful attack. DongWook, however, is injured during the fight, and Myung-gu immediately steps in to heal him. The queen, sensing the healer's importance, shifts her focus to attack Myung-gu, but DongWook intercepts her just in time. Choi Jong-in, seeing an opportunity, orders everyone to stand back. He unleashes his flames in a massive blast, engulfing the queen in fire. As the flames subside, Baek Yoonho observes that the queen is on the verge of death. However, before they can finish her off, the queen lets out a deafening roar that shakes the entire chamber. The hunters freeze in shock as Baek realizes that the queen is up up to something. The scene shifts to the team operating the jammers outside the chamber. They suddenly notice that the jammers are no longer working, and a massive swarm of ants is heading toward the queen's location. The scene shifts back to the queen's chamber, where Hae-In delivers a decisive blow, slicing the queen. Despite this, Baek senses that something is off. His instincts are confirmed when a radio transmission comes through, warning the hunters that the ants are heading straight for them and that they need to evacuate immediately. Choi, Jong-In, alarmed, informs the team that the flame prison he cast over the entrance has been destroyed. Before they can react, a massive presence fills the chamber. The hunters feel an overwhelming aura as a mysterious creature emerges from the shadows. The beast lets out a thunderous roar, and the hunters are left in shock, unable to comprehend how a single monster could possess such immense strength. Hae-In is overwhelmed by the sheer power radiating from the creature and vomits as she struggles to believe that anything could possess such immense strength. The Ant King looks ferocious, and its presence exudes a menacing aura. Meanwhile, DongWook feels his body trembling uncontrollably as each step of the beast sends shivers down his spine. He quickly realizes that they need to defeat it immediately before it is too late. However, to his shock, the Ant King ignores him entirely and strides past him, heading straight for the queen. As the Ant King reaches the queen, it lets out a deafening roar that reverberates through the chamber and forces everyone to their knees. The hunters struggle to recover, but the Ant King wastes no time. It targets Hae-In first and delivers a devastating kick to her stomach that sends her flying into the wall. She collapses and is momentarily incapacitated. The Ant King then turns its attention to DongWook. It shatters his shield with a single blow, and before he can react, it slices off both of his arms. DongWook falls to the ground and writhes in pain. Baek Yoonho, enraged by the sight of his comrades being attacked, charges at the Ant King in his beast form. The Ant King effortlessly counters his attack and slices him down in an instant. Choi, Jong-In attempts to use his flames to create an opening, but the Ant King does not give him a chance. It moves with incredible speed and slashes at Choi, forcing him to retreat. Lim steps in next and is confident in his ability to land a precise shot. He fires his arrows and is certain they will not miss, but the Ant King blocks them with ease. It shatters the arrows mid-air and leaves Lim stunned. Before he can react, the Ant King delivers a powerful punch to his face and sends him crashing to the ground. Amidst the chaos, DongWook, now healed by Byung-gu, manages to land a surprise hit on the Ant King and forces it to step back. DongWook's arms have been restored, and he prepares to rejoin the fight. Meanwhile, Byung-gu has been hiding in the shadows, using his disguise skill to conceal his presence. The skill is highly effective and masks all traces of him, but it comes with a significant drawback, as he cannot move while using it. Despite this limitation, Byung-gu continues to heal his teammates from a distance, and is confident that the Ant King will not be able to locate him. DongWook, determined to protect his team, charges at the Ant King again. This time, the beast grabs his leg mid-attack, spins him around, and hurls him across the chamber. Byung-gu immediately tries to heal DongWook again, but the Ant King senses something. It turns its attention to Byung-gu and pierces through his disguise. The Ant King drives its arm through his stomach and kills him instantly. The sight of his dear friend dying causes Baek Yoonho to fall down in despair. Min Byung-gu, even in his final moments, tells Baek Yoonho to run. The Ant King chomps Byung-gu to the ground, and the horrifying sight sends shivers through everyone. Baek Yoonho, filled with rage, tries to attack the Ant King, but it grabs him and repeats the same words Byung-gu said, telling him to run. This terrifies Baek Yoonho, as he realizes that the Ant King can gain strength and knowledge from the hunters it consumes. The Ant King then declares that the queen is dead, and killing all of Baek Yoonho's friends will not be enough. It demands to know the location of its king. Suddenly, the Ant King senses a powerful presence outside the chamber and decides to leave. It heads toward Goto Ryuji, leaving Baek Yoonho and the others in shock. Baek Yoonho quickly realizes that they do not have time to sit around and must escape before the Ant King returns. However, to his surprise, a massive swarm of ants appears, blocking their path. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Goto Ryuji and his team. They sense that something is wrong, as they have lost all contact with both Team Charlie and Team Delta. Goto orders his team to investigate, and as they prepare to move, he receives a call from Matsumoto. The scene transitions to the seas near China, where a ship captain discusses the situation with his crew. He remarks that the South Korean hunters have taken on a dangerous mission, and the Japanese hunters assisting them means that Goto Ryuji is trying to become a national-level hunter by clearing the Jeju Island Raid. Despite Goto's impressive track record, the captain notes that that he has not yet achieved the status of a national-level hunter and still has a long way to go. Another crew member wonders why this is the case, and the captain explains that only by witnessing the power of Liu Zhigang can one understand. He adds that the captain became a fan of Liu Zhigang after seeing him fight just once. The captain concludes that one of the two countries, either Korea or Japan, will face doom as a result of this raid. The scene shifts to Goto Ryuji as he surveys the battlefield and is shocked to see the deaths of his hunters. He reflects on how they specifically avoided fighting the mutant ants to reduce casualties, yet the losses are still piling up. While talking on the phone, Goto mentions that it is fine because those hunters were weak. Matsumoto responds by saying that Goto is as cold as ever, but reassures him that as long as they have Goto, everything should be fine. Matsumoto then asks if the Korean hunters are still fighting the ants. Goto confirms this and adds that the ants are now headed toward the Queen's location. Goto admits that he is worried there may be a turn of events, but for now, everything seems under control. Matsumoto then asks Goto what he thinks the chances of survival are for the Korean hunters. Goto responds that based on his experience, the Korean hunters have a 0% chance of survival. Matsumoto thinks to himself that this is a good thing because it means the Korean hunters are dead. The Jeju Island Raid is successful, and Goto's attempt to become a national-level hunter has failed. Goto then declares that they have achieved their ultimate goal, which is the annihilation of the South Korean hunters. He orders his team to pull out and prepare to leave. Suddenly, the Ant King appears behind them and attacks. It slashes Ishida's head off in an instant, leaving the team in shock. Goto quickly tells his remaining teammate to run, while he stays behind to deal with the Ant King. His teammate hesitates, wanting to stay and fight, but Goto reassures him that he will only get in the way. The teammate reluctantly leaves as Goto prepares to face the Ant King alone. The Ant King looks at and asks if he is the king. Goto is stunned to hear the Ant King speaking human language and responds that he is the king. The Ant King lets out a deafening roar, and Goto is shocked as he wonders how an ant can wield such powerful magic. He suddenly remembers experiencing this same feeling before, during his fight with Jinwoo. Before he can react, the Ant King slashes his head off, killing him instantly. The scene shifts back to the Korean hunters, where Choi Jong-In is desperately trying to fight off the ants. Baek Yoonho urges Choi to turn up the heat, but Choi explains that if he does, there will not be enough oxygen left for them to breathe. But it was not enough to bring them back to full strength. He realizes that Choi is their best chance of survival and silently hopes that Choi will succeed. Suddenly, one of the ants charges at them, and Baek realizes that this might be the end for them. Out of nowhere, a shadow begins to emerge, and a massive black soldier crushes all the ants in its path. The hunters are left in shock, unable to comprehend what just happened. They stare at the black soldier, wondering what it is and where it came from. The scene then shifts to Jinwoo, who has used his exchange skill to switch places. The scene shifts to a cameraman who is trying to capture the events of the Jeju Island Raid. As he works, he suddenly notices ants attacking him and starts thinking about his father and wishes he had spoken more words to him before leaving. A sword comes out of nowhere and kills the ant, saving the cameraman from certain death. Meanwhile, the scene transitions to KMS, the broadcasting company covering the Jeju Raid. A staff member expresses disbelief that all the S-rank hunters were defeated by a single ant. Another staff member mentions that they are receiving a flood of calls from viewers, which only adds to the chaos. The first staff member panics, saying that they cannot show hunters being ripped apart on live television and that his career is over. Suddenly, the editor interrupts and announces that someone else has appeared in the dungeon. Without hesitation, the staff immediately prepares to broadcast the footage live without any delay. The broadcast resumes, and the image of Igris appears on the screen, leaving everyone stunned. At the same time, the scene shifts back to the dungeon, where Jinwoo is walking forward as his shadows rise around him. He commands Iron, who lets out a massive roar and uses the shout of provocation skill. This freezes the ants in their tracks, and Jinwoo praises Iron for doing a good job. Without wasting any time, Jinwoo brings out his S-rank Demon King's daggers and begins slashing through the ants with incredible speed. DongWook watches in disbelief and asks who the person fighting is. Baek Yoonho, seeing Jinwoo's power, reassures everyone as the battle continues. Jinwoo effortlessly kills the ants, slicing through them with his daggers. Igris joins the fight and slams the ants with overwhelming force. Tusk and Iron also join the battle, and together they decimate the swarm of ants. Wanting to ramp things up, Jinwoo uses his shadow extraction skill to raise the shadows of the fallen ants. The cameraman witnessing this is stunned and cannot believe what he is seeing. A staff member at KMS asks the cameraman through his earpiece how this is possible, but the cameraman admits that he does not know what is happening either. After the battle battle, Jinwoo gathers everyone around and uses his healing abilities to restore their wounds. The hunters are amazed as their injuries are completely healed. However, Cha remains unconscious, and Jinwoo explains that her injuries are too severe for his abilities to heal. DongWook notices that Cha Hae-In is growing weaker and expresses concern. Jinwoo suggests that they need to leave the dungeon immediately before more ants show up. Suddenly, Jinwoo feels the presence of the Ant King and looks back. The Ant King appears and declares that the king is not outside, referring to Goto Ryuji. Slowly, the Ant King starts walking toward Jinwoo and asks him if others call him king. Jinwoo tells DongWook to take care of Cha Hae-In and prepares to face the Ant King. At the same time, Jinwoo realizes that he can no longer sense Goto's presence and suspects that the Ant King is the reason for this. The Ant King asks Jinwoo again if he is the king. Jinwoo responds by calling the Ant King a talking insect. The two approach each other, their gazes locked as the tension in the air grows. The Ant King looks at Jinwoo and comments on his threatening presence before letting out a loud roar. Jinwoo remains calm and unfazed as he smirks and mocks the Ant King. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Joohee, who is anxiously wondering what has happened to the hunters since the broadcast has suddenly stopped. This takes place 5 minutes earlier. Jang-soo also begins to worry. The hunters on standby receive the devastating news and start speculating that the other hunters might not make it out alive. Just as the tension rises, the news suddenly reports that an unknown hunter has appeared, and the live feed resumes. The scene transitions to the Japanese Hunters Association, where Matsumoto, the head of Japan's hunters, is in disbelief after hearing that a talking ant has killed Goto. One of Goto's friends informs him that the ant has returned to the queen's chamber. Matsumoto immediately asks if the Korean hunters are still alive and demands that someone turn on the TV to check the live broadcast. The scene then shifts to Jinwoo's house, where his mother is trying to turn on the TV. She asks about Jinwoo, and Jinha explains that he left in a hurry to go somewhere. And Jinha goes to her room to check her phone and is shocked when she sees the live broadcast. As the image of Jinwoo appears on the screen, Chairman Go becomes overwhelmed with joy, and his doctor quickly urges him to calm down. Back in the dungeon, Jinwoo begins his battle with the Ant King. The Ant King delivers a powerful punch to Jinwoo's face, forcing him to take a step back. The ground beneath them cracks from the impact, creating a massive shockwave that leaves everyone watching in shock. Jong-In, still believing that Jinwoo is a mage, reminds himself that mage-type hunters should never get too close to their enemies. Baek Yoonho comments that Jinwoo might be underestimating the Ant King's strength. The Ant King declares that Jinwoo is weak and not the king. Before it can finish its sentence, Jinwoo gives it a cold, piercing look that leaves everyone stunned. Jinwoo activates his commander's touch skill and strikes the Ant King with incredible force. He follows up with a devastating punch to the Ant King's face, sending it crashing into the wall. The sheer power of Jinwoo's attack shocks everyone watching. DongWook asks in disbelief if Jinwoo is really a mage-type hunter. Baek Yoonho admits that while he knew Jinwoo was strong, he never imagined he could be this powerful. The Ant King roars again and begins walking toward Jinwoo. As Jinwoo observes the Ant King, he realizes that its exoskeleton is incredibly strong, which irritates him. Despite this, he smiles confidently and prepares for the next attack. The Ant King charges at Jinwoo with overwhelming force, but Jinwoo effortlessly stops the attack with a single hand as if it is nothing. He then counters with another powerful punch to the Ant King's head. The impact creates a massive earthquake that shakes the entire area. The cameraman struggles to stay on his feet as the mana waves from the fight overwhelm him. Jinwoo's punch shatters the Ant King's exoskeleton, leaving the Ant King in disbelief as it wonders who Jinwoo really is. Jinwoo delivers a powerful punch to the Ant King's stomach with immense force. This attack breaks the Ant King's exoskeleton and leaves it in disbelief, as it thinks such a thing is impossible. Jinwoo immediately uses his dash skill to land another punch. However, the Ant King tries to counter by attacking Jinwoo with its large tongue. Jinwoo attempts to dodge the attack and jumps away, but the tongue strikes his face and poisons him. It is explained that the Ant King gained this paralysis poison after consuming a cone snail. The poison is one of the most lethal substances in nature and becomes even more dangerous when combined with the mana concentrated in the Ant King's body. Then the Ant King praises Jinwoo for his efforts and tells him it is time to die. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the Japanese hunters who manage to escape from the Ant King. Minoru is deeply depressed after witnessing the overwhelming power of the Ant King. He says they cannot win against such a monster, and not even the entire human population could defeat it. He also mentions that even Goto Ryuji was unable to stop it. One of the hunters questions what he is talking about, but Minoru becomes more pathetic in his despair. Suddenly, she notices a helicopter passing by and remarks that the real problem is about to begin. The scene shifts back to the Queen's chamber, where the Ant King tries to attack Jinwoo again. Jinwoo blocks the attack, and this shocks the Ant King. Jinwoo counters with a powerful punch that sends the Ant King crashing to the ground. At that moment, the system successfully detoxifies the poison from Jinwoo's body. Jinwoo realizes that the Ant King was happy when it thought he was poisoned. By using his heightened sense stat, Jinwoo is able to feel the emotions of the Ant King and notes that it is now starting to feel nervous. He also senses that his teammates are feeling nervous as well. Remembering Hae-In's critical condition, Jinwoo decides he must finish the fight as quickly as possible. Jinwoo jumps to attack the Ant King with a powerful kick, but the Ant King manages to escape. This leaves Baek Yoonho and Choi Jong-In wondering where the Ant King has gone. Then, Jinwoo locates the Ant King and looks upward, realizing it has moved above him. The Ant King looks down at Jinwoo and cannot believe that he is resistant to poisons. It realizes that trying to overpower Jinwoo is a waste of time and decides that its true strength lies in its speed. The Ant King begins to shrink its body and contracts all its energy to increase its speed. As it finishes preparing, it declares that playtime is over. Jinwoo calmly brings out his S-rank Demon King daggers and prepares for the next attack. The Ant King charges at Jinwoo with full force, but Jinwoo dodges the attack with ease. Jinwoo counters with a strike from his dagger, but the Ant King blocks the attack and pushes him away. They both begin fighting again, jumping all around the chamber as their battle intensifies. As the fight continues, the Ant King realizes that Jinwoo is not only keeping up with its speed, but is also moving faster than it. The Ant King cannot believe how this is even possible. Meanwhile, Jinwoo analyzes the situation and concludes that the Ant King might be as powerful as the Demon King, or perhaps even stronger. However, Jinwoo reminds himself that he leveled up after defeating the Demon King, and is now wielding an even more powerful weapon. In addition, he has already inflicted damage to the Ant King's exoskeleton and believes that he can end this battle soon. They both clash again, exchanging multiple blows. Jinwoo uses his daggers to strike, while the Ant King blocks the attacks with its hands. However, the force of Jinwoo's attacks breaks the Ant King's hands. Jinwoo realizes that this is his chance and activates his critical attack skill. He strikes the Ant King multiple times in rapid succession. The Ant King tries to escape, but Jinwoo slashes it again using his daggers. Jinwoo praises the power of his mutilate skill and continues to slash the Ant King multiple times with precision. The Ant King roars in pain and frustration as Jinwoo jumps back to create some distance. The Ant King is in disbelief that it has no advantage over Jinwoo. It roars again in desperation and summons a swarm of ants to its aid. The ants rush into the chamber to rescue their king. However, Jinwoo smiles at the Ant King's attempt and begins to summon his shadows. As the shadows rise, Jinwoo commands them to fight. Igris, Tank, and Iron join the battle and charge at the swarm of ants. The fight between the shadows and the ants begins as the chamber becomes a chaotic battlefield. Igris begins the fight by slicing through the ants while the other shadows join the battle. Jinwoo commands Tusk to fight, but warns him not to attack any humans. He tells Tusk that if he harms any humans, he will never summon him again. Tusk nods in acknowledgement and activates the Hymn of Giants to grow larger. He then uses the Hymn of the Fire Dragon to release a massive wave of fire. The fire engulfs the Queen's chamber and decimates the ants. This leaves everyone in shock. DongWook comments that Tusk looks like the devil himself has descended upon the land of the living. The fire continues to burn through the ants and reduces them to ashes. The Ant King watches the destruction and thinks about how it has always been at the top of the food chain since the moment it was born. It remembers devouring everything in its path and believing there was no limit to its power. However, it now wonders why this is happening. As the flames rage on, Jinwoo slowly walks through them. This terrifies the Ant King. Realizing it cannot win, the Ant King decides to flee. Jinwoo notices the Ant King using healing abilities to recover from its injuries. This surprises Jinwoo because it is the first time he has seen a beast capable of absorbing its opponent's skills by devouring them. The Ant King jumps and tries to get as far away as possible. However, Jinwoo does not give it a chance. He immediately activates his commander's touch skill and slams the Ant King to the ground. The Ant King looks at Jinwoo in terror and begins crawling away in desperation. Jinwoo decides not to let it escape and activates his mutilate skill. He slashes the Ant King multiple times with his daggers and delivers devastating blows. The Ant King tries to resist, but Jinwoo's relentless attacks overwhelm it. With one final strike, Jinwoo defeats the Ant King and levels up. Baek Yoonho calls out to Jinwoo and informs him that Hae-In is in critical condition. Jinwoo realizes that he took too long to defeat the Ant King and begins thinking of the best way to save her. He remembers the S-rank healer Min Byung-gyu and decides to take action. Jinwoo turns to the cameraman and requests him to turn off the camera. The cameraman does not understand the reason, but Jinwoo warns him again and says he will smash the camera to pieces if it is not turned off. Reluctantly, the cameraman complies. Tusk brings the headless body to Jinwoo, and Baek Yoonho is shocked by what he sees. Jinwoo looks at the body and wonders if his plan will work. Baek Yoonho questions what Jinwoo is planning to do, but Jinwoo remains focused. He activates his shadow extraction skill and attempts to extract Min Byung-gyu's shadow. The first attempt fails and Jinwoo cannot believe it. He tries a second time, but the attempt fails again. Jinwoo begins to question why it is not working, because he believes he is powerful enough to extract the shadow. He guesses that Min Byung-gyu might strongly oppose becoming a shadow, and this could be preventing the extraction. Despite the failures, Jinwoo decides to try one last time, as he knows he must save Hae-In. On the third attempt, the shadow extraction is successful. Baek Yoonho is furious and demands to know what Jinwoo has done. However, as he sees the shadow of his dear friend, Baek Yoonho is shocked and surprised. He realizes that Jinwoo has the power to command the dead, and this leaves him speechless. Choi and DongWook are in shock as they realize that Jinwoo can harness the power of the dead. Meanwhile, the shadow of Min Byung-gyu begins healing Hae-In. Jinwoo observes this and says that he can tell the type of person Min Byung-gyu was. He explains that Min Byung-gyu started healing Hae-In without receiving any orders, which shows that he had a good heart. Afterward, Baek Yoonho responds by saying that it is not his friend anymore, and Jinwoo agrees. At the same time, the cameraman is stunned as he watches Jinwoo summon the dead and finally understands why Jinwoo asked him to turn off the camera. Choi realizes that Jinwoo's powers allow him to grow stronger with each battle, especially with his ability to command the dead. Later, Baek Yoonho tells Jinwoo that he will likely use Min Byung-gyu's shadow for many good purposes in the future, and says he is sure of it. However, he mentions that his friend hated violence and requests Jinwoo not to make him fight again. Jinwoo thinks for a moment and then slides Baek Yoonho's hand off his shoulder. He says that this is the second time Baek Yoonho has made such a request, referring to the first time during the Red Gate incident. However, Jinwoo notes that there is a difference now because Baek Yoonho is making a heartfelt request rather than giving an order. Jinwoo agrees with Baek Yoonho's words and terminates the shadow extraction. Baek Yoonho looks at the shadow of Min Byung-gyu one last time and smiles, and the shadow smiles back. Finally, Baek Yoonho thanks Jinwoo for doing this. Soon after, a helicopter arrives to pick up the hunters, but Jinwoo decides to stay behind. He tells Baek Yoonho that he has some unfinished business to take care of. Baek Yoonho agrees and says that the raid is not yet finished. In response, Jinwoo declares that he will clear out the remaining ants. He summons Kaisel and says goodbye to Baek Yoonho. Immediately, Kaisel begins killing all the ants in its path as Jinwoo continues his mission. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the Japanese hunters, where Hoshino expresses disbelief and says that the thing they faced was a monster. He adds that no one would understand what it was, and that it even killed Goto Ryuji. However, Sugimoto replies that the raid is over and the Ant King has been defeated. Hoshino cannot believe this and says it is impossible. Sugimoto explains that a skilled hunter from South Korea defeated the Ant King. Shortly after, one of the crew members announces that the ants are dispersing and the Japanese hunters prepare for battle. Finally, the scene shifts back to Jinwoo, who is using his shadows to kill the remaining ants. He destroys all the eggs he finds and realizes that he gains points for destroying the eggs as well. Afterward, Jinwoo opens his inventory and notices the large number of items he has collected. He realizes that he needs to organize all his weapons and equipment soon. Jinwoo brings out the Demon King's longsword and gives it a whirl. This creates a massive force that sweeps through the area. As he observes the power of the sword, Jinwoo realizes the strength it holds and thinks that it would be a waste to keep such a powerful item in his inventory without using it. Therefore, he decides to use the sword to get rid of the remaining eggs. The sword's power destroys the eggs with ease, and Jinwoo feels satisfied with its effectiveness. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to the American Hunters Association members who are watching Jinwoo's raid. Michael Connor asks Brennan for his opinion on the situation. In response, Brennan replies that Michael can already guess his answer. Michael mentions that Jinwoo can summon hundreds of magic beasts and that he is truly one of a kind. Furthermore, he adds that it would be a waste of opportunity for someone like Jinwoo to remain in a small country. David agrees with Michael's statement and then asks if he knows anything more about Jinwoo. Michael explains that he has the file on the Sung Il-hwan incident. He states that at first they were unsure if Sung Il-hwan was a magic beast or a human, but it turns out that he is Jinwoo's father. Michael also mentions that now is the perfect opportunity for them to bring Jinwoo to their side. However, David says that they cannot repeat what they did with Hwang Dong-soo. Jang-Soo. He reminds Michael that South Korea is a longtime ally of the United States, and that taking another S-rank hunter from them would be a slap in the face. In response, Michael replies that Sung Jinwoo is worth the risk. David then asks if Michael is sure he can accomplish this, and Michael says that he will try his best. The scene shifts back to Jinwoo, who levels up to 100 after clearing the remaining ants and eggs. He begins walking toward the Ant King's dead body. Jinwoo activates his shadow extraction skill and focuses on the process. Suddenly, everything around him becomes dark, and Jinwoo realizes that he cannot feel anything. He starts to think that his shadow extraction might have failed. As he stands in the darkness, a small voice comes from behind him, saying that it is back. Jinwoo turns around and sees the shadow of the Ant King. He smiles as he realizes that the shadow extraction was successful. The Ant King's shadow radiates a powerful aura and is ranked as a general, making it one of the strongest shadows in Jinwoo's army. Jinwoo realizes that this is the first time he is seeing a shadow with the rank of general. He observes that this shadow is more powerful than any of his other shadows. As he reflects on its strength, he decides to extract the Queen's shadow next. However, before he can proceed, the Ant King's shadow calls him king and requests Jinwoo to give it a name. Jinwoo notices that the Ant King's shadow shows the same unconditional loyalty as his other shadows. Curious, he asks how it is capable of speaking. The shadow replies that it has always been able to speak. Jinwoo begins to think about how Iron and Tusk could speak before they became shadows, but now they cannot. He concludes that there must be a rank difference, and that other shadows might also gain the ability to speak once they reach the rank of general. Jinwoo questions the Ant King's shadow, asking why it still wishes to follow him, even though he was the one who killed it. The shadow responds that Jinwoo did not kill it, but instead used his powers to rebirth it. It expresses happiness about its new existence and vows to follow Jinwoo for the rest of eternity. The shadow then bends the knee and asks Jinwoo to give it a name. Jinwoo thinks that it would be strange to call it ant or bug and decides it deserves a special name. Suddenly, he remembers the name of the author who wrote the novel The Ants and names the shadow Beru. Beru thanks Jinwoo for the name and expresses its gratitude. Afterward, Jinwoo begins extracting the Queen's shadow. The Queen's shadow also receives the rank of general. However, as soon as the extraction is complete, Jinwoo feels his bond with the ants weaken. Confused, he asks Beru for an explanation. Beru explains that the Queen has an inherent power to rule over her colony, and that her presence weakens the bond between Jinwoo and the ants. Jinwoo then notices that the Queen's mana levels are very low, despite her high rank. He asks Beru why this is the case. Beru replies that the Queen primarily used her mana for reproduction, and that since she no longer has a body, her mana is significantly reduced. Realizing that the Queen is not suited for battle, Jinwoo decides to terminate the shadow extraction of the Queen. Meanwhile, the shadows begin collecting essence stones, as they usually do. However, Jinwoo commands them to stop and announces that the essence stones will be used for the reconstruction of Jeju Island. The shadows drop the stones with joy. Nevertheless, Jinwoo keeps the essence stone collected from Beru's corpse for himself. He then starts discussing how to deal with the remaining ants. Beru suggests that the ants are struggling to navigate because they no longer have a leader. Jinwoo asks Beru if it knows how many ants are left. Beru estimates that approximately 4,000 ants have survived. Jinwoo then asks if Beru can wipe out the rest of the ants. Confidently, Beru replies that if Jinwoo gives the order, it will definitely accomplish the task. The scene shifts to Jong-Soo and his guild, who are fighting the remaining ants. The mages use their magic to kill the ants, while the guild members from the Hunters Guild notice that the ants are heading toward the Knights Guild. They prepare for battle, as the Fame Guild also gets ready to slaughter the ants. One of the Fiend Guild members warns that each ant is ranked as B rank, and advises everyone to stay in formation to kill them effectively. He also encourages the guild to reclaim the honor of the Fiend Guild. However, Lee Min-sung starts trembling after seeing the ants. Another member comments that although Lee Min-sung is an A-rank hunter, he is still a coward. Meanwhile, the ants approach the shores of Hyundai, where Joohee and Cheol are on standby. The ants rapidly advance toward them, but suddenly all the ants are slashed in an instant. Joohee and Cheol are shocked as they witness the action of Kaisel. They wonder what that incredible creature is and how it was able to move so quickly. The raid continues for 2 days in the southern region of South Korea, with all 5 major guilds fighting tirelessly. Meanwhile, the ants are also found near the coast of China, and the crew members there are shocked that the ants have flown all the way to their waters. None of the crew members sleep for 2 days as they prepare for the second wave of ants, which is now within shooting range. One of the crew members asks the captain for permission to fire, but the captain tells them to wait. He mentions that Liu Zhigang is in action. Liu Zhigang looks up at the approaching ants and declares that he will make every single one of them sink to the depths of the ocean. Using his weapons, he creates a massive force that kills all the ants within range. Corpses fall into the ocean. Liu Zhigang remarks that these ants are weak and wishes he could have fought the Ant King instead. He feels disappointed that the battle was not more challenging. Meanwhile, the scene shifts to Thomas Andre, who is discussing the Jeju Island Raid with his secretary Laura. She asks for his opinion on the situation, and Thomas responds that Jinwoo and Hwang Dong-soo are connected by one incident. He speculates that there is a possibility Hwang Dong-soo's brother was killed by Jinwoo, and that Hwang Dong-soo is seeking revenge. Thomas expresses regret that he has not been able to talk to Jinwoo, considering everything that has happened. He says he is looking forward to meeting Jinwoo in person. Laura then asks what Thomas will do if Jinwoo and Hwang Dong-soo get into a fight. Thomas replies that Hwang Dong-soo is the property of the Scavenger Guild, and he will not forgive anyone who messes with his property, not even the government of the United States. Later, the scene shifts to the Hunters of the Knights Guild, who are accompanied by soldiers to collect essence stones and remain on standby in case another incident occurs. Jong-soo begins telling a story about a man who never had any luck. He explains that this man always tried to be the best at what he did and dreamed of becoming a gold medalist in weightlifting. The man trained hard, followed a strict diet, and even had a good dream the night before the competition. However, Jong-soo reveals that the man was awakened during a manometer evaluation, which barred him from competing in the Olympics. As Jong-soo tells the story, he becomes emotional and starts crying. Yoon-tae asks if the story is about Jong-soo himself. Jong-soo continues saying that the man found a new purpose and vowed to create the country's best guild. Yoon-tae responds by calling Jong-soo an inspiration. As they search the area, the group finds some top-quality essence stones and realizes that they are closer to achieving their goal of becoming the country's best guild. One of the members jokes that taking the stones might be considered embezzlement. They notice that the area looks very clean, and Jong-soo reassures them that he cannot sense any mana nearby, so they should relax. Suddenly, an ant appears, but Jong-soo quickly slices its head off and tells the group not to worry, promising to protect them. As they continue, Yoon-tae notices someone approaching. The man is large, muscular, and exudes a fierce presence. Jong-soo questions who the man is and warns him to follow their orders or risk being shot. The man responds with a strong gaze and begins speaking in beast language. Jong-soo is shocked to realize that the man can speak the language of beasts. Suddenly, someone snaps their fingers, causing everyone to fall asleep. Rakan asks the Frost Monarch what he is doing. The Frost Monarch replies that he is avoiding any commotion and has only put the humans to sleep temporarily. Rakan confirms that he feels a familiar power and wonders why the other person is helping humans. The Frost Monarch responds that he does not understand it either. Rakan suggests that the Frost Monarch should ask the person directly if he is curious. As they survey the area, they notice the rotting corpses of ants and decide to leave. The Frost Monarch opens a portal, and Rakan mentions that one of their kind is present in South Korea. The Frost Monarch tells Rakan to leave the situation in his hands. Rakan asks if the Frost Monarch is unwilling to get involved in the mess, and the Frost Monarch replies that it is one way to interpret his actions. Rakan calls him a coward, but decides not to complicate matters further. He opens another portal and leaves.